I'll call to order the March 15th, 2022 meeting of Ag and Rural Affairs. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your attendance at this. This is our effort once a year. It's been a while now, but once a year to get out and do a little bit of outreach and make sure that we're getting some feedback from the rural and agricultural parts of the city. I'd like to start out with a few introductions. Mark Rosinski, I think, is the manager of the facility here. Mark? You went downstairs. Well, Marianne, you're next. Do you want to? Marianne McKenzie.
Tell something about it.
Honor and Joey and Julia take care of everything outside, and we're just really excited to have everybody here and hope that we can continue to do these things in the future. And any questions, anytime anybody wants to come visit, give us a call. We're always here.
Thanks. We appreciate your hospitality.
It's been amazing to watch this come together. You've really done a nice job.
It's been a labor of love. Everybody really, really enjoyed the barn renovation particularly, but most days everybody enjoys the outside stuff too.
Mary Ann, in Southeast Ranchers, everybody, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark had told me it's a Sears and Roebuck.
Yes, it is. Sears and Roebuck Kit Barn. Yep.
Wow. I knew they sold houses. I didn't know they sold barns. Yeah.
Down on Washington Avenue, I guess, and probably drove by horse and buggy down the road.
Is there a year on that?
In the 30s, we think. We're still working on getting exact documentation, but
Mary Ann.
You're going.
Hey, Mary Ann, if you could just take just a minute to explain to us your concept here, your vision here, and where you want to take this project in the future.
Well, yeah, so originally, I have the farm next door, and I love the farm next door, but I didn't have an old barn. And this had a really old barn on it. So when the Durford girls decided that they were gonna let the family farm go, we got to talking, and I just had fallen in love with this barn. I used to sneak across the fence line and climb up in here, and it's just beautiful, and being on the land and in the barn just brought me so much peace and solace, and it's just kind of where I find myself again. So I purchased this with the idea of, because it's on such a busy road, it's so close to Madison and so many other smaller towns, that I thought this would be a good place to be a liaison between city dwellers and the agricultural and rural community. And my background's in horticulture, so I feel like I know how to grow single plants, but I'm not very well versed in growing crops. But I have a strong interest in regenerative agriculture, and corn and soybeans are great, but they don't capture my enthusiasm the way some other crops do. And I was just looking for a place to experiment really with, because all this stuff is sustainable, but it's not sustainable if it can't support a family. So can we do these things and actually make a living off of it and try to introduce people, expose people to it? That is in a chestnut shell, which we're going to start growing chestnut trees. But
Thank you.
yep.
Okay, we do have a microphone up here too, so if anyone would like to speak, I think we can hear each other, but then they'll be able to hear us out on Fact TV as well. So, thanks, Marianne. Randy, anything you would like to say? You're one of the two alders for the area. I want to make sure that everyone knows who you are.
Other than I am Randy Udell, and I am one of the alders for District 4, and that's where we are at now. Probably represent most of you. The other alder, Jim Wheeler, is not here. He actually, because we're in between council, he actually is on vacation. And that's not by his doings, his wife set it up, so I said, you better not change that. But otherwise, he would have been here. And I just want to say thank you for joining and welcome. And if you have any questions, I'm always available. My number's on the website, or I can certainly give you my card after the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Chief Alfonso Marias is here, I believe.
No, he won't be here till.
He's going to be here at 5?
4:30 or 5.
4:30 or 5, okay. All right, Chad Brecklin, City Administrator.
Is this on? No? It is good? Okay, that's all you need. I'm kind of curious how we outbilled the mayor in the chief and then I, so.
Oh, he'll have his
Either that or you're saving the best for last, or the person who's going to speak the most, right? So, anyway, I am Chad Brecklin. I've been with the city just about 23 years next month, and I spent the first 22 years in the police department, with the last 3.5 as police chief. Moved into the city administrator role back in July, and have been learning quite a bit. So if there's anything we can do at City Hall to help out our rural residents here in Fitchburg, let us know. Having been with the city for so long, I certainly recognize the rich history and the value that our rural area and residents bring to the city. So whatever we can do to help, let us know.
Thanks, Chad. Amy Mercer is here, City Assessor.
Hi, I'm Amy Mercer. I'm the city assessor. I just came today in case you have additional questions pertaining to the egg land and forest or swamp, things like that. So, and I'm always available via the phone or email if you'd like to call and chat about your property at any time. Okay?
Thanks, Amy. Mayor Richardson.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. It's one of the few places where when I talk about how I'm the 5th generation of my family to be here in Fitchburg, it's actually very common with many people here who are also 4 or 5 generations or more. So it's just been a great honor to be the mayor, represent you, all of you, especially growing up here. And I think we're gonna have some Q&A a bit, later. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. But other than that, thank you for being here. It's such a beautiful facility. Really enjoy seeing this and seeing what's possible in rural Fitchburg as well. So I know that this has been really popular and will continue to be even more popular once people find out about this. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, I think we'll get into a few items we need to cover for the meeting here. Item number 2A on the agenda is approval of minutes of the January 18th, 2022 meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions?
Yeah, I have one on the vote to deny on the wedding barn.
That would have been item 5A
Yeah, I
from
had
last
5A.
meeting. Yep.
Yeah, I had talked to Wade about it. That was a mistake, that my vote was put as a nay and it was a yay.
Okay,
So under item 5A on the minutes, Broman's vote would be changed from nay to aye.
okay. All right, anything else?
The manager is here now, Mark, if you wanted to say.
Oh, Mark?
He was just going to introduce you.
Yes, we're, Mark Rosinski, we're going to introduce you before, but you were collecting eggs?
Yeah, I'm Mark Rosinski. I'm the events coordinator here. I tell people I'm very, very lucky to work here on the farm. Yeah, so if anybody wants to rent out our space for a private event or weddings, we can do that now. With the help of Fitchburg, we were able to get a special use permit, conditional use permit, sorry, here at the farm, which we were able to get last fall. And we had our very first wedding in January after that. They were waiting. So it's very exciting to be able to share this farm and what we're doing here with the community. A lot of city folk coming in here, so we get to give them an education about hops and sheep, which are coming at the end of this month. So Very exciting place to work. So thank you all for being here. And, we tell everybody, if the gate is open, come on, stop on by. We'd love to chit chat with you. But welcome.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Make a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have on the agenda public appearances for non-agenda items, but we're also going to have open discussion and resident feedback. So unless there's somebody that wants to discuss something in particular that wouldn't come under the resident feedback, we'll probably move on from that and save the feedback for that section. Agenda review, I did think maybe we should address the resolution and get that out of the way.
Sure.
And then have the feedback
Sure.
session. So if someone would move to amend the agenda to take up item 5C next.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, resolution R18-22 may have some items in here that would impact the rural community as well. So I did ask the mayor if he would kind of introduce the topic and make a few comments with regard to this. This has to do with TID number 6 closure investment plan.
Yeah, there's two things that we are kind of essentially creating a spending plan for. We got about $3 million in ARPA funds, and that has some restrictions on it. We're also closing one of our TIDs this year. And so when we do that, there is some money left over in that TID that hasn't been used, and so that goes to the city as well. Some of that money, it gets split between us and the school district and the county. But we get some money there as well that we can also use for various projects. And so this plan is really going through and coming up with kind of what I feel like some priorities are. The council can then do amendments just like we can with the budget itself. In terms of ag and rural affairs, there's a few things. There is money in there to continue to fix some of the rural flooding issues, but the other parts of the city as well. But I know there are some areas here in rural Fitchburg that we need to continue to do some work on. Like Barney's obviously one of those, Goose Lake, things like that. Also, a big thing looking at that is future growth, and another piece of that is making sure that as a city we can continue to move forward. We can improve anything here in the city that might be 30, 40-year-old processes. So it might be some new software. I think that going forward, something like Zoom is going to always be something that is going to happen. And so we want to make sure that we're investing in the equipment and the software so we can continue offering that, because it's been really great for a lot of residents and staff to be able to remotely come into meetings as well. Maybe they can't get to a meeting for many different reasons. And so that's a big piece of it as well. We had a bunch of different buckets. I'm trying to think, is there anything off the top of your head, Randy, you can think of that especially impacts rural Fitchburg?
Well, no, I don't directly about, but this Curry Court came up, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
talking to Mike, and I just wanted to kind of reinforce that that's not completely off the table.
Yeah, and I know that we just got noticed that we had submitted like 5 different projects to receive some funding through, actually Senator Baldwin submitted that, and we actually were approved for that. There was about $1 million of projects. I think there's 5 or 6 projects on there, and the grant that we got funded 80% of that. So we got about $800,000, and I think Curry Court was part of that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but no, all right. There's 5 different projects, and so that's great that we're continuing to get money. And part of that is these plans that we have, and to be able to say we want to do this project and this project and this project, because as these things come forward, that really gives us a step up, because they want to know that these are things that we've planned and that we want to do. And so by having these plans that we've been doing and working with some of the people here as well for that, that's been really helpful to know that, oh yeah, these are the obstacles, and this is kind of an idea of what that cost is. Other than that, there's a bunch of other things on there. There's been some amendments, and we're voting on those next week, I believe, from the council. That doesn't mean that all those things are going to happen either on this plan. That's the other thing, is that unlike the budget where we have to go to a certain dollar, we have kind of a long list of ideas because there might be federal funds that's actually end up funding some of these things where we don't have to use our money. And so we want to, if those happen, we want to make sure we have other ideas on there. So some are a higher priority than others. We're not going to do all those things in a year as well. There's a lot of projects on there. Staff can't handle that much, but we're going to do a lot of things. And so it will go from here, part of the CIP, which is our next step in the budget process, which is some of the bigger projects. And then from there, it's the operating budget, which is kind of the final piece to that. And so those all kind of funnel into the operating budget, which comes at the end. And that's where, through all those steps, residents can provide feedback on priorities, things that they think we should be investing in. So all those things are really important as well. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, great. So the funding sources that we're talking about specifically are the tax incremental district number 6, the closure of that, which is where? What all does that include, so people know? And then maybe you can talk about what ARPA is also.
Yeah, the TID 6 is up by Target. So all that stuff around Target, been very successful for the city. And so we're closing that out ahead of schedule. And actually, I can tell you in the next year, we're actually going to close TID 4, which is like the interchange with Highway 14. We put that in there, Promega's projects. That's another extremely successful TID that we're going to be closing in the next year as well. And we've timed it to close right now because we, as you know, in October, are annexing part of the town of Madison. That's going to put obviously more strain on all of our resources as a city. We were able to add about a dozen new staff positions in this year's budget. And when we close, and that was because we're closing TID 6. When we close the next TID, possibly next year, they'll enable us to add some more staff because we've got a lot of departments that haven't grown in a while that are feeling a lot of strain, and we want to make sure that we can provide those great resources, whether it's public safety or even things like public works. We have a number of positions there, parks. So all the departments really are going to be impacted and helped by those funds as well. ARPA is the federal program, and all communities got money depending on your size. We got about $3 million. There are a little more restrictions on that. The TID money, there's really no restrictions on. We could use that for anything we want. The ARPA restrictions aren't too bad for our size. We got a lot of money that would be a little different, but though that's American Rescue Plan Act is ARPA. And so every community got those funds, and that's another big piece of it as well, that we're able to do a lot of projects that we maybe wouldn't have had the funds for, at least for a while. And so we were able to accelerate some projects as well as part of that.
So that was part of the federal infrastructure bill?
Correct.
Okay. Great. Questions for Aaron?
Yeah, I've got a question. How many of you people out here know what a TID is? Maybe you might explain what you're talking about.
Sure.
And when you say the TID comes due and how that works.
Yeah, TID stands for Tax Increment District. And what we'll do is we'll go to an area, for example, where Target is right now. Before Target was there, we said, all right, this is an area that we know there's going to be development. And there's a lot of businesses that want some help, especially in something like that. There was an old quarry. That can add a lot of expense to building in that area. And so when they want to do that project, they say, well, we want to be here, love the location, but being on the quarry, that adds $500,000 maybe to leveling and whatever it might be. And so the city then, essentially, we do it as a pay-go, so they actually pay for it. And then when we create the TID, it's holding the amount of money that we get from taxes to the general operating budget level, but the additional money when they do those buildings, and then Amy goes and assesses them, and they pay more taxes, but that increment, that extra, the above what kind of the baseline was when it was started, that goes towards this TID increment district. And so when they have to spend this extra $500,000, when they come back and they have to prove that they spent that money, then we will reimburse those expenses from that. So it's not coming to the taxes necessarily, and we're able to get a lot of projects. Sub-Zero area has been a lot. You know, ProMeg, obviously, there's been a lot of projects there. It's another something that you also use a lot for redevelopment. And so if there is a lot of contamination on land, that's a big piece as well. For example, we're going to be giving some money to Quick Trip. They're building on the corner of Cyan Road and East Sherrill. They've already torn down those buildings that were there, but there is some contamination that's there. And so with the TID that's there in that area, and the TID's not everywhere, we're limited on where we can have these, but with the TID that's there, we are essentially helping them pay for that cost. Otherwise, they'd look at the balance sheet and say, well, this isn't worth it for us to build here because of these extra costs. So, you know, when that happens, and it's about, you know, 15 to 20 years is generally how long these TIDs last. And we've been very successful in all of ours. There's different ways of doing them. The way that we do it, where they have to pay for it first and then get reimbursed, that's something that is the only way that we do it. There are other options out there in other communities that will give them the money up front, and then you don't always get that money back, or they don't always do what they were promised. And so it's a lot riskier for the city. This is a really smart way. Misty Dodge, our finance director, you know, kind of insists that we do it this way, and the council has agreed with that because it's just a smart financial thing, and really it essentially takes 99.9% of the risk for the city out of it. So they are connected. The TIF is tax increment financing. So the district is kind of the whole area, and the TIF is the individual projects getting financing. So when ProMega builds a building, and you know, we might give them a little bit more Quick Trip, the financing is the individual projects themselves. And so then when we close the district, then that gap, that increment, that all goes on the tax rolls now at once. Instead of going to the separate district to pay for projects, we kind of said, you know, we're not doing any more projects in this area. It's all developed. And so all that goes to the taxes then, and then we've got a little bit more money to spend, and the council never has any problems spending more money.
George?
Yeah, I have a question on, you know, this is a rural venue, and the rural, how do you figure on this American Rescue Plan, how much actually is going to go for infrastructure in the rural area? Like these highways that are getting so beat up right now, how do you going to proportion that to the rural highways? I know we had a lot we spent on the northern Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction, but you know, there's more traffic coming through Fitchburg, you know, and with the new Costco going in, and the pharmaceutical factory that's going to be going over there. A lot of traffic on, you know, across Fitchburg on Whalen, and north on Seminole, and all the other roads, Cyan and Fish Hatchery. How do you proportion that? You know, the money coming from this American Rescue Plan, earmarked for infrastructure.
Yeah, so there's a focus on the stormwater and those types of things as well, but I would say that I don't think we have necessarily anything for kind of general maintenance. I don't know if we even can for general maintenance. Where I think the benefit is that money paying for other projects that we were gonna have to do, so that enables us to then take that money to do any other infrastructure improvements we need to do, resurfacing roads, things like that. Verona Road is, it's a unique challenge because of the town of Verona, and they don't want to spend the money needed, and the city of Verona doesn't care about the traffic that's impacting with Costco and the pharmaceutical plant as well. So, you know, that's a road that we are in discussions with, but it's a challenge for sure.
Yeah,
So Aaron, you did set aside some money in the TIF plan for some road resurfacing.
Yeah.
Plus the grant money that was set aside for competing for grants as well for potential match that could be utilized.
That's right, yeah, there is some, I did put some money in there towards road resurfacing, and so that would be, you know, anywhere that we might need that. I don't remember the amounts or anything like that, and Randy can always put more money in there, but but there is money in there for road resurfacing, because that is something that's a concern as we continue to grow, is making sure that our roads are continued to be upgraded and improved when they need to be.
Any other questions on this agenda item? All right, if not, I think what we were looking for is a recommendation here forward to.
Yep, you
Plan
can approve
Commission
as
Council.
presented or approve as amended.
All right, do we have a motion to approve as presented, or is there anything anyone would like to discuss as far as amendments go?
So moved.
Second.
As is?
This is,
All right, all in favor? Aye.
aye.
Motion passes. Okay, that finishes up the business that we need to cover tonight. We're going to open it up now for discussion about any topics that anyone would like to talk about in the rural area. Any questions, thoughts, feedback that you might want to provide? Yep, sure.
I've got an idea. One of the objectives of this meeting in the past, and I think now, is I'd like to hear a state of the Fitchburg report. In other words, we have our leaders right here. There's a lot of things going on in Fitchburg that we may or may not know that's going on that would be interest to this group right here. So with the mayor here and everybody, maybe we could start, I don't know whether you want to start with Chad or with Richard, with the mayor, but could one of you give us an overview of what's happening, where our growth is, what is coming down the road as far as growth, and where our energies are right now in Fitchburg? Of course, it's always going to be good to hear about the rural area too.
I'll give this a go.
So we've got quite a few things going on, as you can imagine. I can kind of start with the big one right now, and that's the ARPA and TIF closure that the council is currently working on, which will help determine what some of the priorities of the allocation of that funding is. That's going to take place yet this month. And the other real large project that we're working on right now is obviously the preparation for the town of Madison absorption. We're just over 6 months away from that. The city has done quite a bit of investment already. As the mayor mentioned, I think nearly 10 or 12 positions were added in this year's operating budget to help bring on some additional staff, not only to meet existing needs within Fitchburg itself, but also to meet the anticipated needs of the town of Madison. Some of the staff that was added included 2 police officers, a firefighter, an assistant public works director, a parks maintenance worker, some clerical position, and then there were a few others. I don't have them all off the top of my head. But so right now the city is in the process of filling a lot of those positions. As you can imagine, we're not immune, much like any other employer, in finding and recruiting good people to work. The applicant pool has been a bit challenging in some of these processes to get them filled, but we are confident that with some patience, we'll get these filled with the right people. So you're going to start to see in the short term here some information coming out about our outreach efforts with the town of Madison, some informational meetings that'll be coming up, and some events throughout the summer and fall that kind of helps acclimate our new residents to Fitchburg. There's about 1,400 residents that will be coming into Fitchburg, which will push our population well over 30,000 into 32, 33,000 range. Other things that are happening is Lacey Road is going to be under reconstruction this year from Seminole Highway to just about to Fitcherona Road to the west. You're going to see a roundabout go in at Seminole Highway and Lacey Road beginning this summer. Ideally, that'll be finished in time for the school year to begin. And then Lacey Road obviously will be reconstructed to the west as well. Edgewood College has a project that's moving forward near Lacey and Seminole as well. They're looking to put an athletic complex there, which would include soccer field, track, baseball, softball fields, I think tennis, kind of an indoor tennis type facility, and also doing a lot of restoration of the wetlands that are on the property there as well. I think in total, that's about a 40-acre parcel that they're developing, and I think nearly 10 acres of that parcel will be restored wetlands that they'll have some trails through and those sorts of things that'll also help improve that area. We're also doing some road construction on Sain Road. We did south from Lacey Road down to Irish, but just past Irish last year, and we're going to do from Lacey Road up to East Sherrill, where the new Quick Trip is going this year, and then 2 years from now, you'll see the rest of Sain Road to the north with some intersection improvements at McCoy Road and Sain Road. That's where takes the big bend. There's been a few crashes through there over the years, so that's going to get some notable improvements to help make that intersection much more safe. There's also some traffic signals that'll be going in at Highway MM and McCoy Road. There were some temporary signals there over the last couple of years. Those have come out due to the Highway 14 project, but they'll be now getting some permanent signals put in there as well. And then in 2024, we also have some construction planned for Seminole Highway as well. So there will be some improvements to that as also. And then also to your question, sir, we have been in conversation with the town of Verona, in particular about Fitchburg Road, and trying to get some grant money from the state and federal government with all the infrastructure bills out there to really make the improvements that are long overdue there. And we know that some of the developments in Verona is going to just add to some of the issues there. So that's definitely on our radar. We've actually submitted for some grants already on that. So from a development standpoint, a lot of the single-family homes those lots are being spoken for as soon as they hit the market. There's a lot of multifamily housing that's being built as well. The demand is extremely high in the multifamily housing side of things as well. That has been a bit of an adjustment, I think, for a lot of us to see how younger folks are preferring to rent and not own. And we had a meeting with a developer a couple of months ago who's been in the business for 30 years and has had his own troubles trying to adjust, so to speak, to that change in mentality. But it's definitely a changing market that's been here out in Fitchburg as well. From a future growth standpoint, we are looking at probably that Fitch-Verona, Seminole Highway corridor with the South Stormer Prairie neighborhood. And then we're also looking at the Sain Road, Highway 14 corridors, kind of probably another area for potential growth. We'll look to do some neighborhood plans and studies in the next year or two for those. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Fish Hatchery Road, north of PD, has completed. That was a case where a tax increment district was used to finance those road improvements. And we've definitely seen a lot of projects coming to fruition there. Obviously, you've seen two apartment buildings, the senior housing at Traceway Drive and Fish Hatchery Road, the High Line, and then Terrace Point across the street has also come up. And then we have another project that's moving forward just off of Ocala, which was just put in, and right behind the UW Credit Union. So. And then there's a fourth project that's been proposed for the north side of Traceway Drive. So those projects have all been in the neighborhood of about $30 million a piece. So you've seen some significant redevelopment in the Fish Hatchery Road corridor. So when we talk about rural Fitchburg, I know the mayor mentioned some of the stormwater projects. One of those projects, welcome Chief Morales, how you doing? You're up next, I think. No. Is Lake Barney. That was one of those 5 projects that got some grant funding. So obviously that will allow the city to continue to do some evaluation and study of what's causing some of the flooding issues in the Lake Barney corridor as well. I wish I had the list of the other 3. I know the mayor covered one of them. So stormwater is obviously a big concern right now. I know the council has prioritized that, as Alder Udell can probably convey. I think there's a good 10 or 12 stormwater related projects throughout the city, including our rural areas where the council has asked our engineering staff to prioritize those and spend some time developing some solutions, or at least evaluating what the solutions may be. So there's all kinds of development. Mr. Fahey's here. He's got another phase of his project off of Nobel moving forward. So we're pretty fortunate to have a lot of development going on. Terra Vesta over off of Highway MM is also going quite quickly as well. So that's a very quick nutshell of a lot of things that barely probably touches the surface in a lot of regards. So
Hey, a quick question
Yeah.
on, you have an update on the Lake Barney right now and how the water table is with that or anything?
I personally don't, but what I could do is I could check in with our city engineer and then share. Ed, are you the chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through Wade and Ed, and I'll look to get an update to the committee.
Well, there's a committee meeting for Lake Barney coming up early in April also,
Okay.
so I'll be at that, so I can report back to
Okay,
Ag and Rural after
Okay.
that too.
all right, well, we'll do it
Yeah.
that way then.
Okay.
Cheryl Drive and Sain, is that gonna be a roundabout?
No, that's planned for a signalized
Signal light,
intersection.
okay, that was a change from what originally was.
A roundabout was considered for there, as well as a newer signalized intersection that had some components to it, but ultimately the council elected to go with a more traditional signalized intersection. And there also will be a signalized intersection coming this year to Lacey and Sain as well,
Okay.
along with some railroad track improvements.
Any chance that we could get a stop sign at the railroad crossing on Burn Road? That is the only railroad crossing in the city of Fitchburg, including the private ones, that does not have a stop sign. Clayton Road does. And that's much lower traffic than Burn Road. And there's been a real resistance to, and I don't understand why, because there's a speeding issue there, and I believe you have been made aware of that over the years when you were in the squad car. And there's been Amy's husband, State Patrol, and when her grandparents were on the corner, Dustin has stopped people at 90 miles an hour on Burn Road. And is a stop sign gonna solve all the problems? No, but it'll put another tool in the officer's tool belt that they could maybe use. And the railroad I've done that research a while back. The railroad does not care. It has to either be a yield or a stop. They don't care which one it is. A stop is more beneficial to them. And I'm curious as to why the resistance.
I can't speak to the history on it. I have not personally had any conversations with engineering as to why it's a yield versus a stop. One initial consideration that I would offer is that if a stop sign goes up, it creates an additional situation where there's now a violation that's occurring where, I don't want to speak for Chief Morales, but I suspect that it would be a challenge for him and his team to be spending a considerable amount of time then beginning to watch for stop sign violations at that rail crossing. And while I don't want to diminish the potential for any issues there, obviously the trains do run relatively infrequently over the course of the warm months. I think it's a couple of times a week. So I think there's a bit of a cost-benefit analysis there as to what makes the most sense. So
Curious as to why Clayton Road, which is less traffic, has a stop sign and we don't.
Clayton Road has actually now been closed. There's the railroad. The road doesn't even go through across there. So
But historically, that's
Yeah.
always been the bone of contention. And there has been fatalities at that crossing,
which one?
Burn Road. And Clayton also, but Burn Road, yes, there have been fatalities there. And I don't think it's out of line to ask for that.
I could certainly have a conversation with engineering and see if there's any reason to do some further evaluation there, and I can report back through Wade to see, what the history might be and if there's a reason to make a change there.
You have all of the Oregon High School, the kids that are from our neighborhood, that's the way they go to school, and the way they come home from school. And, yeah, I just don't think it's an unreasonable request.
Understood.
Jointly and operated by WRRTC, it's sort of a unique rail corridor.
It is unique, you are right, and we are partial owners in that in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if you have more information on that ownership. That's been a long, I don't know, Tom was probably on the mayor when that was purchased, weren't you? I mean, not to suck you into this, but it's been around, that purchase was made a long time ago. And to be honest with you, I'm not familiar with really what role we have other than part ownership there. I assume we must lease that back to the rail company for operation? I don't know.
Notice that Fitchburg and Norden are the permitting agency for that corridor of land, so it really doesn't require any input from WRRTC, although they may want to say that. But I agree or would support Mark's position on that intersection needs some sort of control. Whether it's enforced or not is an entirely different story, but having the recognition, the symbol of you need to pay attention to what you're doing here, slow down. The stop sign would be sort of an extra step to speed going into that S corner, and anything that you can do to prevent or slow down traffic there is certainly beneficial. A
Yeah,
stop sign, no, people don't always obey the laws, but if you can save one fatality, it's worth it. If you can save one collision, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'll have a conversation with engineering and see where that's at, and, you know, perhaps even just improving the signage, the warning signage in advance of the yield sign could be a viable solution too. You know, we'll take a look at it.
On the sliding road from Aurora to East Arrow when that's happening?
I don't know exactly when that'll happen. I think that it's going to be more later in the construction season, to be honest with you, because I believe that the rail improvements, they preferred to do those towards the winter beginning because of the fact that the rail line would be less used. So.
I mean,
I don't know if I can go that far.
well, I mean, last year we dealt with it
Right.
all year. I'm sure you heard us. And so it would be a shame to have at least, I don't care if north of Lacey, but at least the Lacey to Aurora part, to have that under construction also becomes easy again.
Yeah.
You know, if we're really sitting here saying we care about Fitchburg Farms, that would be a pretty devastating thing to do to this.
I'll add that to my conversation with the engineer and see how that's going to play out.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, Chad. I haven't met Chief Morales yet, but I'm sure everyone here agrees with us that the speed on the rural roads in Fitchburg is a priority. And we just heard that we're gonna get another police person, and I've told multiple police people I can park in my driveway anytime they want. And I'm sure everyone here agrees with us. If they need to park in driveways to slow people up, we're more than willing to do it, and maybe we can get a little more somebody, I always thought maybe we could get a decoy car and park out in the road. If we had some extra one, save money.
Yeah.
And they just substitute it out once in a while and put a real car there.
Sure.
Because I put my son on the bus at 7:06 every morning, and the cars go flying by Irish Lane, and they've done it, I've seen it, speed has increased, and I know speed's increased all over the world, but maybe a little more. I'm gonna advocate a little bit for some rural speed enforcements. I think would be one of the things that I think I can get 98% of people to agree to here.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful for us as a city would be to know the locations where you see the most frequent problems and when you typically see those. Is it typically morning and evening rush hour, or is it throughout the day, or whatever the case may be? Is it weekends? Those sorts of things.
4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we have 1 or 2 cars that are trying to get home early, and they just open it up. And my son will tell you that the bus has been passed, people going 60, 70 miles an hour on Irish Lane.
And you're on Irish near Kane, correct?
Yep.
So we obviously have that as a potential area for some extra attention. Other areas, I guess you're
And it's the same there in the afternoon, they go by, you know, just flying.
After they've come off South Side.
Sure. So are you west or east of Sain? This section of Bird Road that you're
I'm east of Sain Road,
okay.
Right by the railroad.
near the railroad tracks. And the same thing,
That I
when they
know.
come flying through there, and
Okay.
it's pretty bad sometimes. I've seen them, I think, going at least 80 miles an hour, all the way down there. Come around the corner down there on the other side of 14, around that corner, and they'll be drifting over to the outside. I've lived there all my life.
Sure.
And it's been that way.
Okay.
I'd like to see more police down there. I'm retired now, I'm home a lot. I never see a squad car down there. And they can park in my driveway and they can stop a lot.
All right. Other areas?
Lacey, they've done a really good job, I will say. Their presence on Lacey is great.
I'll thank you on behalf of the chief. Tom?
Thanks for the opportunity and that Egg and Rule is still doing this. I think it's important for the city, absolutely. Thanks for doing it. The first question, I have 3 questions. My first 2 are, the first one, it has to do with a lot of people in the rural area. Is there any more assessments that we're gonna have? Is there any more reassessments coming up that we don't know about? And you gotta talk loud.
Okay, I know I have a quiet voice, so just raise your hand if I'm talking too quiet. So we are revaluing, and in Fitchburg, we tend to revalue every year. Okay, we did not revalue in 2021, and we do revalue each year because the market is just so dynamic here. As you know, all the new construction, all those new subdivisions and things like that. So we can't just revalue the new subdivisions, we have to revalue everything. So we do look at the rural, I'll look at those rural sales this year and see how they're coming in, and then we'll look at that land value. We do have different neighborhoods.
If you're gonna do that though, can you please tell the residents in the rural area, or let them know prior to you doing that, to give them a heads up, and not just send it in the mail? That was a real problem about a year and a half ago, and it was a real problem in my house too, that I didn't even know about it, and I got it in the mail. So would you please warn the citizens about that?
Okay.
If you would?
How would you like to be warned of
That's
that?
your
I
call.
guess that's,
That's
okay.
your call.
Okay, I didn't know if it's,
No.
you know, we do tend to do interviews with Fact TV to talk about that coming up. We do always post it on our website. But I do know, like Mark mentioned 2 years ago, that a lot of the rural have a hard time with the internet and things like that. So that's why I'm saying if there's a specific way that is better for the rural property owners to be notified, just let me know and we'll do that. If it means a postcard, we sent out postcards last year. If it means a flyer, I was intending to include a flyer again this year as I did last year, talking about the change and different things like that, so that if you don't have internet access, you can at least have some of that information, you know, in a piece of paper that describes each of those. Okay.
From your statement, I understand that my wife goes this way, it's real problem for the city, and it has to do with the Lacey Road going to Fitchburg. Now that intersection, is the city council already given the green light to a roundabout there, or is that for discussion, roundabout versus a stop and go lane?
Lacey and Seminole, that was prioritized by the city council to be a roundabout.
When that project starts, can that be all done at one time so that you don't disturb the residents, 1 month and then another 5 months or 3? Is it gonna all be done at one time when it starts, so we do the roundabout and the roadway all at once? Is that the thought of the city? What's the thought of the city on this project?
So there's going to be some prep work that'll start coming up here in probably April or May to do some clearing of woods along the project, that are within the right-of-way. And then the first priority will be to do the roundabout at Lacey and Sain, because we want to get that in when school is out of session, recognizing that the traffic is obviously more significant during the school year. So they'll start on the roundabout, and I can't say for certain if the engineering and road construction will, kind of do things simultaneously, or if they'll do the roundabout and then carry off to the west. But it will be one project, kind of in 2 phases, so to speak, this year.
Interrupting the traffic, we'll probably shut it off, and if you do the roundabout, why don't we just continue west and do the road too, so it's done all at one time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put the trust in the engineers on how they've got it planned out. I don't know exactly what the timing is, Tom, to be honest with you, but clearly we'll have to close Seminole and Lacey to put that roundabout in. Yeah.
Bid on that project, has that gone out to bid and hasn't come back, or where is that in the process? Because this project is a huge project for the rural area.
Sure.
This project went from, I'm going to be off, but about 9 million to about 11 million. And I'm disappointed in it very much because it looks like Park Street instead of the rural area. That project with the bike lane, and it wasn't the 2 others just before, I don't think, but the bike lane is almost as wide as the traffic light. So that's close. But is that been out for bid? Where are we on that project?
Do you know if that one went out? I'm not sure if that's gone out. Yeah, I don't know where that's exactly at with all the contracts and bids that have gone out, Tom. I don't know, but I can check if you want me to.
You can let me know. My neighbors are asking me questions left and right.
Sure.
Because that's a huge project.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
As long as I have it, I'll give you my last one. But
Yeah.
then I'm done. I'd like to talk about for a second the hub on the north end that a lot of the rural area people are going to pay for and maybe not use. Maybe they will. It's a great project for the city. I wish the other alder was here. This project went from 2.5 million to probably 3 and climbing. It's climbing at 3 million. The alders that are responsible for that area, District 2, they like to spend money they don't have. And the project problem I have too, and I hope Randy will take it back to the other alder. Randy, you can obviously support that, but get something in return. Get something in return. They're going to use a lot of parks money to build this project and do this project, I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. And what I want to tell you, pal, is if you're going to vote for that you and Wheeler, this project is 3 million in climbing. That's not done yet. And I talk about that because of the cost today, building materials, everything going on. We could, Wildwood South, we could use a bubbler. We could have the shelter covered. In other words, I'm going to say barn doors. Not to mention, I got to stay in District 4. Not to mention the Key Farms Park that we could add things to. But I'm trying to encourage both of you If you're gonna give them a yes on the north end, get something in return.
Absolutely.
It's your call.
Absolutely. I'm going to comment on that, and I made it in finance and in council. I spoke to Julia Arata Alder, and a year and a half ago, you were still on council, and I asked if this hub could be completed with $1 million of park fees, not property tax, and she gave me her word, yes. And I reiterated that with her, and now we're up to 2.5, 3.5, 5 million ultimately. And so I voiced my concern and said we need to pull back on this particular project unless there's some concessions, maybe phase 2 doesn't go. Something has to balance out here. We can't start with $1 million project and end up with a $5 million project. And you're absolutely right about those park fees. It will take away from other parks as well. And I'm sure Alder Arata and others will dispute that, but that's where we have to have that conversation.
But all the ones that's taken from the parks, it's hard to return sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, I agree with you, yeah. So, I just want to make sure you know that I am speaking up for you, if you and every other resident in Fitchburg, yeah. It's a concern of mine as well. I mean, it's a great project, no question about it, and we need to do something there, so. It's just what is it and at what cost? Yeah.
That big of a project, we gotta look out for District 4.
Absolutely.
And
And in District 4, excuse me, in District 4, I've been, and the mayor will attest to this, and City Administrator Brecklin, but I have been pushing very hard for stormwater projects. We need them, and there are a number of projects that I've pushed for. And I know Aaron, the mayor, he's tired of hearing me. We joke back and forth all the time. He said, yes, I know, Randy. So, but that's been my big push. And I've always welcomed ideas of bubblers and other things that I may not be aware of, so please. You and I know, we talk, so, yeah. But.
I have a question, Chad. Is that going to be all in one phase to Fitch-Arona?
The Lacey Road project?
Yeah, with the right-of-ways up through all the trees?
Yeah, the intent is to have the Lacey Road from Seminole Highway to Fitch-Arona done during this construction season.
And the roundabout all in the single phase?
Yep, all of this construction season, yep.
With the intersection there with the new access from Promega?
Yes, the Commerce Park Drive should go through and connect to Lacey during this as well, yep.
Is that signaled? Or is it,
no, I don't believe so.
Is the other end Fitch-Arona signaled or anything either?
No, there's nothing to change that at this point in time. Now, that could be something we would look at as when we look to reconstruct Fitch-Arona Road, because with the grant we've submitted for would allow us to reconstruct that from Nesbit all the way down to Tonto Trail in the township, so just over the hill there.
Okay.
Sort of being under-addressed with the reconstruction of Lacey and like you mentioned, that interchange, signaling, whatever, but.
Can you talk up?
I said I think that Fitch-Arona Road is sort of being under-addressed here with the reconstruction of Lacey Road. I mean, Lacey will be a one-season project, but before you see road construction, you're gonna see utility relocates and things like that. So you're gonna have closures at least a half a lane for daylighting, storm, utilities, things like that, before the road even starts. But then at the end of Lacey, I didn't hear it mentioned, at Fitch-Arona and Lacey, I think that's the southwest corner of that intersection, isn't that a 60 to 120 lot subdivision going in there with no signaling change whatsoever?
There is a proposal for a 120 lot single-family subdivision in the southeast corner in the city of Fitchburg. I've not seen where that one's at. They're still, still in the design phase. But again, that's where we would look to, as part of that Fitch-Arona Road reconstruction, again, ideally taking that down to Tonto Trail would allow us to address that entire segment from Nesbit down past where that subdivision is proposed at this point in time.
What's the complexity with Fitch-Arona Road? Is that like a section line? It's jointly owned by Verona and Fitchburg, and
that is the complexity, is that it is the border between the township of Verona and the city of Fitchburg. The jurisdictional boundary is the center of the road. We have responsibility for the east side. Town of Verona has responsibility for the west side. But obviously, it's not like you can mobilize a road project for one half of a road. So we've been in conversations with the town of Verona trying to encourage them to allocate some budget funding to do a reconstruction project there. Unfortunately, we have not been successful to this point. So we've taken it upon ourselves to take the lead on applying for some of the federal grants that are out there and the state grants that are out there on road projects in hopes that we can get additional funding that will then help push the township of Verona over the edge, so to speak, to do a project there. So we know it's overdue, for one, and we know it's only going to get worse with the development in Verona with the Costco in particular, and we're certain that that's going to drive some additional traffic without a doubt. So
the biggest problem is that the town of Verona wants to keep it a town road. That's what they want to pay for, is to make it a town road, which essentially is just repaving what's there. But that's not good enough for the safety in that area, especially from Tonto up to Nesbitt. So that's where hopefully we can get these funds from the government to make up that gap, because they don't want to pay for more than just continue it to be a town road. Because they said, oh, we're the town of Verona. Well, that doesn't work for a road like that, because that's not a town road. That's a very heavily traveled road, and it's going to get worse. So I just want to say one thing. You know, Tom mentioned assessments, and because last year we didn't do full assessments, but we do that every year, I just want to reiterate that your assessments will go up. Now, the big thing to remember is, what did your assessment go up versus the average of everyone? Because if everyone goes up 20%, then in theory, your taxes, if the council doesn't raise taxes, will stay the same. If everyone goes up the same percent. To give you some perspective on two things just in the last week or so, I found out one of my neighbors sold their house for $605,000. And I can tell you, I don't think I can get that for my house, but I paid 16 years ago, $180,000. So in 16 years, that's saying I almost tripled the value of my house, which is crazy to me. I just yesterday talked to a member of our PFC who had someone knock on their door and approach them and offered to buy their house, and gave them an offer they couldn't refuse, and so they're selling their house. That's just how crazy the market is right now and where the values are. So it's going to be a challenge for you, Amy. I'm sorry. But just to let you know, assessments do go up. The big thing, though, to remember is, what's the citywide average compared to your percent that went up. So that's the big thing. But it's crazy to me when I hear some of these stories on what people are paying right now, especially for single-family homes. Yeah, Pat.
But you're talking about coming out and reevaluating on farmland and farm buildings, but I mean, that's a totally different story. And I mean, our values went up astronomical, I feel, and we had made no improvements. And I mean, there's nobody coming along and offering to buy our property at these values, maybe somebody's home in Wildwood or Seminole Forest. And I mean, it was almost a penalty for us, I feel. And we drive around and look at all the improvements that are being made right north of us. I mean, we're at the corner of Seminole and Lacey, and we look and see what's going on around us, and the cranes that are going up and whatnot. Can't understand why the revenue has to be raised off the farmland.
So
We're taxed on use valuation of farmland, so it feels like it's being put on our buildings, which are pretty well depreciated out.
So the difference in 2020 was, I had discovered that the values had not changed in a very, very long time. And that's why that was such a large increase in 2020. It was catching up for years that had not had. So the sales were showing us that that's where the value should have been. but they had not been changed in many years, whereas other parts of the city, they had been going up each year. So that's why it was a much larger increase. Now, you're right, the ag land, actual agricultural land, that is on use value, and that, that's set, and that's not at the market value. It's at the use value, which is like, around $300 versus $14,000 an acre, what it might sell for. But a lot of your land also has forest and swamp, and those were land values that had not been changed in many, many years. And so that was brought up to market value. Tentatively right now, and I don't have those numbers set, but I believe a lot of those values will stay relatively the same, might decrease, might increase a little bit. But those values for those other classes, your woods, your forest, your swamp, the undeveloped classes, those we actually look at the sales of other properties, and then we determine what the fair market value is. And that's not going to increase the same as like other areas are within the city. I do look at the land or your buildings based off of those same sales. So if there are sales of farms, agri-home sites, those are the ones that we'll compare your properties to. If you have a rural residential house, that will be compared to other rural residential homes. They're not compared to, let's say, a home in Terra Vesa or a home in Fahey Fields or anything like that. So we do a lot of stratifying, is what I say, is we break it out by much smaller neighborhoods to see where those sales really are.
It's hard to believe that my house that I built for $18,000 in 1973 is worth close to $300,000 now.
Yeah, well, it's like, like Aaron said, his neighbor's house sold for $600,000.
There's a difference there though, Amy, because we're speaking like a house in town versus a 5th generation family farm. Those just aren't for sale. So
No.
it's not really apples to apples. Quick comment just based on the audience that we're speaking
Yep.
to.
But that's what I'm saying. We
Yeah.
separate that out by what we call a neighborhood, by the same market segments.
Sure.
So we're going to compare the same rural homes to other rural homes. We don't compare your home to like Aaron's home.
Sure.
So we do break it out according to what we call a neighborhood or a market segment. And so only the homes that would be like agri-home sites are compared to other agri-home sites.
Does that answer your question, Pat?
I guess so.
Yeah. And then you have the splits. So some ag land has had like 2 or 3 acres split off to create a new home site in the rural communities. So those areas will be compared to those same type of properties. That land value for those home sites are not going to be compared to if you have a farm home site, if that makes sense. And if you get your notice and you have questions, just come in and we'll talk to you about it. And I can show you the exact sales we're comparing your properties to and things like that.
Amy, when you spoke about notification before, you're correct. Most of the rural area doesn't get fact TV at all. Very, very few. If you look around this room, and I doubt very many people have access to the city channel. And internet is at best sketchy. Like Amy's house, there's not a chance that you even get anything. She couldn't get satellite, or couldn't get during the COVID. The access we came in because there wasn't any access. So your mail might be your only chance. The marshland, crop-wise, isn't worth a lot more than marshland was 20 years ago. because it's, unless you're selling water.
Dirty water.
And then why did it double? I have a hard time with some of that. Same with the woodland.
Yeah, so
We're not recreational woodland, like up north where they sell rights to go through it, and that's where that law came from. There's a piece on my farm that we're taking the trees off in order to get the taxes down. I'm not sure that if you asked the common residents of Fitchburg if they would really appreciate that, what the vote would be. But my bet is that they would rather see the trees. But I don't have a choice. As your department told me, well, I guess you'll just have to take the trees down.
Well, I don't know, I personally would not have told you that. I would
It
have.
was not you.
I think I know what you're referring to, so, but yeah, we do look at those sales. So when we have a rural property, we will actually break that property out. And I'll measure out like, what's the forest, what's the ag land, what's considered undeveloped, and that would be your swamp or your wasteland. And then we have two different categories. We have our forest, and then if that forest is adjacent to agricultural land, then that's ag forest. And the ag forest is 50% of the market value of a forest. So we break all of that land out and kind of stratify that. We may look at other sales within Dayton County, but we don't compare it to, let's say, Marquette County or Green Lake County. You know, you're exactly right. Your swampland is going to be different in those counties or in those areas of the state. So I do look at the sales here. I will more than likely look about 3 years back on sales for the agricultural, you know, the acre-based classes as I refer to them, to try and find the best value and the best support for the values that we set on your properties.
Well, there are no ag programs for a small wooded area under 5 acres. So, yes, you do cut it a little bit, but don't make a lot off of that.
No,
Doesn't do much to pay the taxes. So, what is your suggestion?
I think the suggestion would be is if you want to talk assessments specific to properties themselves, is make an appointment with Amy and have the conversation. I mean, it's a complicated situation without a doubt. Obviously, Amy and her team do the best that they can in a fair and equitable way that they can do that. But obviously, if you have specific questions related to your assessment, I'd make an appointment and have a conversation with Amy. I found her to be very helpful in my transition to this role. She's willing to explain things, and she's an open book.
I am an open book. I did bring
We've done that.
some of the flyers,
Yeah, I have one small question on that. We have forest land that's connected to an ag field. And we were told that you couldn't do much with the assessment because it was a state program on the forest land. And said that Fitchburg didn't have the control over that increased assessment. And so ours was increased quite a bit, and that was about 23 acre woodland connected to 5 acre and a little bit more on the other end of ag land.
so I'm not sure what they told you, but it may be that in 2020, we didn't have a whole lot of sales. So then we also looked at what the state set their values at. So that may be.
Well, we were trying to get it adjusted down, and we had wetland that was doubled, but actually it was a lot more than doubled until we talked to you.
I know in 2020,
but-
anything that was the ag land was 2,000, not ag land, the swamp and waste was at 2,000 an acre. I think forest was 9,400, if I recall, per acre.
Well, I know my sister's here, and she talked to your department about that woodland and said that there wasn't anything it could do.
Okay.
They did look at our wetland, and they did reduce that considerably.
But they said as far as the woods, it was a state issue and not something Fitchburg had control over. And I talked to another guy who has land in a fish hatchery with woods, and he was told the same thing.
Well, I guess I'll say I'm sorry if you were misled in that. The state does not set that value for woods or undeveloped.
Well, that's
The
different than-
local
that's-
assessor sets the value.
That's entirely different than your last testimony before this group. When you talked to us about this issue, it was our understanding that the state, at the forest or woods at the state level, throughout the state, had a set rate. And that rate was determined a lot on recreational use. And so it was carte blanche for the whole area, including Fitchburg. And this, so if that's not the case, how come we've got woodlands assessed at $9,000 an acre, or in that part, and you, of course, give a 50% off of 9,000 if it's next to a cropland. That's $4,500, and you've got ag land, corn and soybeans, at assessed value at only a few $100s an acre. Why did Fitchburg then talk about $4,500 per acre assessment on woods?
So I think things are like, we're not fully understood. So ag land itself, if it's a crop or you're tilling that land, if it's used for agricultural purposes, that ag land, the state sets that rate, okay? So it's about $295, it might have been $285, it depends on if it's tillable 1, 2, or 3. But they set that rate, but only for agricultural land. Your woods, your forest, or your undeveloped, and undeveloped is road right-of-way, swamp, waste, might be a pond, that category of undeveloped, the local assessor will review all of the sales, and we will calculate what that full market value is of those classes. And then like your undeveloped is 50% of that fair market value.
So the fair market value on woods that we've got out here is at $10,000 an acre for, and so my question comes is, where do you go to find that fair market value? I don't know of any $10,000 in our area. Are you going counties away?
No, we'll look at sales first that occur in Fitchburg itself, and then we'll look at other sales that, if we don't have enough sales, we'll look at other sales within the area. They may be Dane County, or, we'll look at other communities that are close by that are similar to Fitchburg.
So, okay, I don't know about you people, but $10,000 for woods has been something that has been bothering all of us for over a year. And we appreciate you coming today, really.
Yep.
And
Nope, I
really,
understand
because
it.
this needs to be
It's a very
little figured out.
complex. Mm-hmm.
So,
If it would
would it have
benefit,
happened that some developer came in, bought a woods, that developer is certainly going to pay good money for it because it's going to go in development. So now that becomes $10,000 value that you look at? Is that possible?
it may be possible before I took over, but no, if it is purchased for development, I will analyze that more as a commercial sale or potentially a residential sale. So we actually look at that for what that person bought. So we will ask those questions, just like we do of all sales. We will ask the property owners who sold or purchased or sold that property. And then we will, I guess we try to get in their head. What are they purchasing that for? Like when Promega purchased the property on Lacey Road, Well, that isn't coming into your calculations for your ag land or your forest or, you know, that is looked at as a commercial, but an undeveloped commercial sale. So they have to put infrastructure in to build that. So in that type of sale, we'll say, okay, you know, there'd still be, to have that sale be utilized in a commercial property, we'd have to have the infrastructure added to that sale price to compare it to a commercial developed piece of land. So we are really looking at someone who purchases a piece of ag land for agricultural purposes, and where it will continue to be tilled and things of that nature. And if it would be beneficial, we always list the sales, but if I need to, I can stratify that and the sales that we utilize for that, and I can provide that to you if you would like. You know, if you come into open book, I'll share those sales with you.
That leads to another question. You just stumbled into something. Tell us about this open book dates, so we all know those dates, because that's important. If we've got a problem, we do have an opportunity to talk about with an open book. What are those dates that you usually have?
We have not set the dates yet. I always try to get it towards early April, but I've been very short-staffed this year, so it may be closer to mid-May before I send out the assessment notices. So on your assessment notice, it will say when open book is, and then when board of review is. So open book is that informal appeal process. That's where you call us up, you can stop in, you can schedule an appointment, and we'll sit down and talk with you about it. We can even show you what's valued, how we have it valued. We can show you the sales, but that's the time that we'll talk with you. Unlike many other jurisdictions, like I live in the town of Dunn, and it might be like 2 hours that open book is. Here, we usually have open book overlap a 3-week period. We try to have it long enough so we can meet with all of our customers and, you know, do a good job for you is what we want to do. So when you get your assessment notice, that's what we tell people. Always look at that value. You know, if you've had a recent appraisal for any reason, you know, look at that and see if you think that value is appropriate or not.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. It's a hot subject.
I understand that, and I know 2020 was really hard. You know, I discovered a lot of things in 2020 that I had no idea of. And my job is to make sure things are fair and equitable between all members of the community and all classes. So, you know, I can't just revalue residential and not revalue the commercial. So they had a surprise in 2020 also, which really isn't a surprise because they know what their properties are worth. But for, you know, the rural Fitchburg, your values had not changed in some instances since 2005. In 15 years, that market had changed. And that was why I think it came to a surprise for many of you, you know. So this year, it shouldn't be as much of a change as it was in the past, unless we discover something that we didn't know about in that case.
Amy, in 2020, that we were notified quite late because the land rents were pretty well set before we got the shocking letter that Tom had spoke of earlier. And at that point in time, you can't go to your renter and say, oh, by the way, we're going to raise your rent. So we were really caught by surprise, really caught short. My ag land went up $4,000. Well, you take $4,000 out of your budget for a year's operation. That's a big bite.
So not your agricultural land, it would
The
have been.
farmland, the total tax bill increased $4,000. That's what I look at, the bottom line. It was this much this year, $4,000 more with no notification at all. And that really sucked.
Yeah, and the ag land, when I say ag land, that is purely the land that you till. You know,
I understand.
it's used for agricultural
I
purposes.
do understand, but most everybody in here looks at the bottom line on the bill. Because that's what you're gonna have to open your wallet up and find an extra $4,000, like in my case. And sometimes your budget is set for the year, and you have a hell of a time with an increase like that.
Amy, you might reach out to the Fitchburg Star and see if they would do an article about this. You could feed them some information. That's one good way to get to the rural residents. We don't all have access to cable, but we do get the newspaper, and I
And
think a lot of people read it.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I know they just said that I don't believe the Fitchburg Star is doing paper copies anymore, is it?
Correct.
Oh, that's why we didn't,
Not to
that's why
everyone?
we didn't get one this month, because where's the notice for our meeting tonight? Yes.
Yeah.
I got one Friday.
Yes, because I did read that,
So-
Aaron, who are they going?
I believe there's some 53575 addresses that aren't getting it, and then there's some people over like Allied Drive area that aren't getting it anymore.
So if I send.
53575 is a,
Don't have good internet.
that's a lot of rural Fitchburg. If we contact them, will they continue to send it? Are there some
You
options?
want to pay
$25 a year, so we can subscribe to it. Okay. So if you want to do that, contact the Fitchburg.
Online, I mean, your internet's great, not great, maybe it's hard to download the PDF, but it is online as well.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, if that's the way you're getting your information, you may not get that anymore through the Fitchburg Star.
Just a comment on communications, because that's come up, and I definitely think for Fact TV, so Jeremy Crosby, I'm your Fact TV manager. I've been with the city since 2010. We've come a long ways with outreach, and I think we can do better. That's the bottom line. But to say cable TV isn't what we've invested in, cable TV at a high level, the cable companies don't want to invest in the government side of things, so they've been taken away from investing in future cable. So we've been spending more of our time using alternatives like internet-based stuff, which I realize that broadband is a tough thing, and that's something that we're trying to work together as a group. But overall communications, I would love to hear more from you guys on how you would like to get it, because that's all I spend every day. We do a newscast every single day for the city. We've been doing it for 5 years. And when I hear you guys say you didn't get the information, that's a tough one for me, because I've interviewed Amy every single year, and we've had some pretty good discussions, trying to break down some of these things to get the information out there. So what would be a better way for, not just Fact TV, because we reach for all departments, what would be a better way to reach ya?
That was a great segue for the broadband. So obviously,
I didn't want to say broadband. That would be my next part to say.
obviously the city does have a work group. Alder Udell is one of the members of the broadband work group. So we know that there's been a lot of funding that's been identified through the federal infrastructure bill and others programs through the state that may help improve broadband coverage. We are looking at how we can potentially maximize getting some of those dollars. And as part of the ARPA and TID money investment plan, one of the things that we could potentially use some of that money for is to actually hire a broadband consultant that would help us identify in a more extent than what we already have, where our coverage issues are, how we could potentially capture some grant money, and then also look to partner regionally. Dane County is obviously spending a lot of time and resources on trying to develop more county-wide solutions to broadband. And then the other thing is we know that there is likely going to be a company coming in to expand their broadband network within Fitchburg. And how do we partner with them to perhaps expand it farther than what they had intended to do, kind of that last mile or next mile philosophy there as well. So it's definitely on our radar. We recognize that there are access issues both in cost and in just pure not having access to reliable broadband, and we are trying to find solutions to that. Unfortunately, none of the solutions are quick and easy. That's the biggest challenge, but it's definitely on the city's radar as well. So I'm going to turn it over to, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm curious, who does have access here? And how is it available? Through the local cable channel that's available here in the city? Is it Spectrum?
Depends on where you live. We did a survey, it was mailed out to all rural residents last fall. There were several hundred surveys mailed out. I think any address, Lacey Road and South, I think, got this survey. And then Wade and others put together the responses in a map that would indicate who had coverage, who it was provided by, what level of speed was available, and then it also identified the areas by response of who didn't have coverage. So we do at least have some generalities of neighborhoods and areas where coverage is certainly lacking and availability is certainly lacking.
I'm 1,000 feet short. I'm 1,000 feet down Seminole Highway from Lacey Road, and I can't get access.
Right. Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
I get it. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the type of project that, as those networks are expanded, that we're trying to get them to take those the next 1,000 feet or next mile. Right. Right. And you call and you're like, yeah, we don't service your address. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to turn it over. Chief Morales came in. He had some interviews today that he was doing, so I want to at least give him an opportunity to say a few words.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Al Morales, Chief of Fitchburg. Inherited a great police department from City Administrator Brecklin. You do have a great police department here at Fitchburg. I'm enjoying my time here. I will tell you, when I finish speaking, I will race out of here. Yesterday and today, we're undergoing interviews for the position of police officer here at Fitchburg, and I have a few more that are going to be waiting when I get done here and get back. So it's not that I'm running away from you to answer questions. In fact, I want to get your address and get your name, sir, because you just challenged me saying you don't see police. So you're going to see police hopefully for dinner or lunch. You got to make it, though, and we'll stop in, definitely. Yes, ma'am. Wayland Road.
Wayland Road.
Got it.
Notorious, Wayland Road.
Wayland Road.
Run them by, have them park.
Got it.
Overnight if they have.
Got it. Those are challenges. I enjoy that. Realistically, I enjoy coming to meetings like this. Not all the information is going to be positive. It's going to be negative. But at the end of the day, it's interaction. You have to get to know your police officers, and we have to get to know you. We need to know what the actual problems are. Fitchburg is not a place that has shootings every day, murders every day, robberies every day. But if the problem is traffic, then we have to sit down and study the traffic issues. We have to understand what that is. We have to look at it through different lenses. For traffic, you need data. For traffic, you need technology, right? And for traffic, you need intelligence. For traffic, you're also going to need the 3 E's: education, enforcement, and engineering. It's not a problem that's going to get fixed overnight if it's something that's been happening. I'm here listening. I don't know about the traffic issues that are going on the south side of Fitchburg. But just in hearing you, there's a ton of things that are going through my brain. Oregon School District, they're racing through here. Okay, maybe they're students. All right, how do we identify what the problems are, and how can we engage with the schools to say this is a problem? Can you help us with it? Technology. Someone would say speed boards don't work. But if you can put a speed board, just a thought, that has a license plate reader, then you take your data, and now you identify that data and say, okay, there's license plates here. That may not work in Milwaukee because in Milwaukee, the license plate don't match the vehicle, right? But in Fitchburg, the license plates will fit the vehicle, right? And now we can talk to mom and pa and say, hey, your kid who's driving by here at 80 miles an hour, what do you want us to do with this? Because it's a problem when it's somebody else's kid until it's our kid that's committing these things. And do we want our kid to get, thrown, 10, 12 tickets for all of these things? Or can we take care of it like as a family, like what I see here in Fitchburg? It's a community where everyone knows everybody. So let's treat it like everybody knows everybody and handle the problems as a community. So those are things that I want to bring to the table. The Fitchburg Police Department with COVID, no different than everyone here. Stay away, masks, not much connection. So my job in this summer, is getting out and actually engaging and getting our officers to engage. That's 2 years of staying away from people. And now we got to get back and communicate with you, which is what I've been telling our officers. You need to get out of the squad. You need to engage. I've been doing several right along with my officers. The first thing I wanted to do, you may not think so, I love the rural area. I want to meet a farmer. Introduce me to a farmer. We went through so many farms, but the officer was just driving by. That's such and such farm, that's such farm. Yeah, okay, I see the farm. I want to meet the farmer. And it was a little bit difficult of that transition to say, we're going to go talk to Mr. Hageman, who happened to be on his tractor that day. That's what we need to do, is engage and find out what the problems are. And your problem may not really be a problem, but if we look at it as a group, if everyone here says this is a problem, and we really sit down and identify what that root cause is, I may be coming to you and saying, that car that you say is going 80 miles an hour, here's the data. It's only going like 3 or 4 miles above the limit, 5 miles above the limit. Is it really a problem? But that communication is more important than anything. And that's why I appreciate it. I appreciate how you all here are able to express yourselves, because I'm passionate. Sometimes I express myself. Some people say, this person's angry. I'm not angry. I'm just as passionate as you are. And I enjoy it. If you give it, receive it, and I can take it, because I'm going to give it as well to you, and we'll go for a ride. And we'll be able to have it out. But I'm going to enjoy your company. I really will. I hope you enjoy mine. Yes, sir.
Chief, I want to commend your Department of Public Works for the speed boards that you move around the city. They really help. Because sometimes you aren't aware of how fast you're going, and they really work well.
Absolutely, and I want to look at, I think it is. Believe it or not, taking over soon, we're going to be annexing the town of Madison, and there's some squad cars that we're talking to Misty about obtaining. Somebody brought up here as a decoy. Just other things that we can do and move those things around. It's something, sometimes you just need to grab that driver's attention. And when you're out here in some of the rural areas of city, believe it or not, people are listening or watching their cell phones, texting, doing things like that, and not really aware of what's going on. Bringing attention to the problem may help. And where we are, and I'm just looking at our age group here, people don't really communicate on television anymore. It's social media, so are we behind? Jeremy's bringing up Fact TV. We have to identify other ways to communicate and address these problems. That may help. The speed boards that you're talking about, I don't know if those are LPR. I don't know if you know, City Administrator, but I would like to look if we do get something, or if we can update those speed boards, if that's something we can do to really identify. I like to look at data, and then look at that data. Okay, what lever did we pull? Is there change in the data? Okay, if there is, how long can we sustain that? So there's a lot of thought that goes into these things, as simple as just a traffic issue. But for me, I don't mind that anymore. I'm past the times of the murders, all of that crazy stuff. I want to deal with real people, and you here are real people.
I've got a question. As you look at Fitchburg, and we all read about you know, the shootings and everything like that. And when you look at your resources, your police resources, your patrol cars, etc., and you look at this area that really, you know, stands out as needing something. Now you look at the rural area. What percentage or how much resources do you give the rural area with the advent that you've got huge problems to the north?
It's calls for service or amount of time that is needed for calls. Naturally, the more congested a neighborhood or the more it grows, certain neighborhoods, which is your north end of Fitchburg, there's going to be more calls for service, more activity. It doesn't mean that it's an incident where there's a shooting or robbery. It doesn't have to elevate to that. It's just once you have more people, the services of the city are used more. Doesn't necessarily have to be police. It could be fire. It could be Department of Public Works. The more you have of people, the more services that they require, which the more rural you are, the less services, which means you're going to see naturally less police officers on this side of the city versus the north side. But that doesn't stop us from engaging in this side of the community. There's still complaints that we have to deal with. So that calls on studies that we do internally to see what the calls of service are. This is an area that should be patrolled. Just because there's not much crime or calls for service doesn't mean we don't patrol it. It's still a part of Fitchburg. I could tell you, and that's what I want to know when we talk about visibility. City Administrator Brecklin told me this from day one. I said, what do you do, what's your day consist of? And this came from him. You know, on a day where I need to breathe, when I want to, get out of the office, I go to this side of town. I go to the south side. I like to see the cornfields. This came right out of his mouth. And the same with me. The same with the officers you have here. They don't always want to be on the north end of the city. This is an area where it's kind of the decompression. It's an area to come and drive, and what I want them to do is, you may not see them, they have to get out of their car and talk to you so that you see them over on this side of the city. It is important that they get out there, and it's important that they engage with you. That's what I'm hoping I can do moving forward, especially coming into the warmer weather. Any other questions?
I would just like to really thank you for coming out here and speaking to us. And, I can't speak for myself, but a lot of these people don't see police officers very much, and they're very well behaved. But
You just haven't been caught.
Yes, exactly.
Most of them, right?
But no, seriously, more presence, more, when you want to take breaks, drive the squad cars out this way.
Absolutely.
Stop in.
I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the city. And we're sure glad to have you.
Thank you. It's humbling to hear that. I'm happy. I'm born and raised in the city, and that's pretty much all I know. But my parents immigrated here from Mexico. My father was part of a ranching family that raised cattle for beef. They all know how to lasso bulls. They know how to ride horses. I don't know how to do any of that. I love to, but I don't know much of that. So for me, even though I haven't grown up in this environment, it calls me. It really does. My older sisters, I come from a family of 10. They know how to make cheese. They know my mother and my father are still alive. He's 89. They know this lifestyle. I don't. So from coming out here, you're pulling something out of me that I never, I only got to see when I visited, but I didn't really get to live it. So thank you very much for welcoming me.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am. Much appreciated.
I can tell you what, if you're going to try to learn how to lasso anything, that's on your own time. Tom is not going to cover that.
Public engagement, I have a ranch.
Yeah.
In rural Fitchburg.
Lasso bull, you know what, right now?
It just depends what we're doing that day. Kevin might have something loose,
I love to. And I also want to complain to Amy too. Since everybody's blaming Amy, I'm going to blame Amy. I'm looking for property and it's too darn expensive out here. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time. We will be, you will be seeing me more. I really love this area of the city. So I'm going to try to get to know each and every one of you. Thank you.
Well, while we have a moment of silence, you probably all got a card in the mail, and just in case you didn't, we're all going to be voting at a different place going forward. So District 4 is going to be over on Lacey Road at the old fire station rather than the community center. So hopefully everybody got that notice and didn't just toss it. Wade, have you got anything you wanted to, any department report? Okay. Mark?
For those of you who, there's 3 of us in here who know it very well, but for those of you who haven't taken the time to stop by the Veterans Park by the old City Hall on Fish Hatchery Road, Tom Clowder, Mike Connors, myself, Dave Strassman, Elton McClure, or some of the committee members there are more. But we've done a I think a pretty nice job of adding to that Veterans Park. We've got some monuments, some benches, we've got more coming. And we've done it all without any city money. It's all been paid for by donations to this point. And we spent, stop and look at it. I think you'll be impressed with it. But none of that it came out of your tax dollars. So.
Anything else that anyone would like to chat about? Yes, ma'am.
What's the chances of getting the bike path extended from Wayland down to here?
Mayor? Oh, Chad, he's got the money.
I mean, we can certainly look and see what the cost might be. It might be something that could be done. I think, I want to say in 2 or 3 years, this stretch from East Sherrill down to probably Wayland and or farther south will need to be resurfaced or reconstructed. That would obviously be a good time to do it potentially. I could add that to my list of conversations with the engineer to see if they can at least maybe ballpark what that would cost, and then we could perhaps at least have a conversation about that during our capital improvement budget process, which is the 10-year spending plan for those large projects that the council could consider. But it's not something I've heard a request for, so I'm glad you shared it.
There was a project a few years ago that it was supposed to, the bike path was supposed to come farther south.
And I know the Village of Oregon is looking at how they can connect their path to I can't remember which one's up the road, just the Badger State Trail, yeah. And so they're talking with the county and looking at ways to do that. They have an idea where they want it to go, but it comes down to money, like a lot of things. And it wouldn't be direct down Fish Hatchery Road, roundabout. You could get at least to that path that goes into Oregon.
It's supposed to be an educational site,
Yeah.
that people are supposed to drop in and visit. Why not?
Yeah, it's money. It'd be great to. I would love to come all the way down to the bike path, really.
Well, it would sure enhance this location for Marianne.
You can get down, you can go down the old rail line. You can go down that way, and then,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like to walk. I don't ride a bike. I like to walk. I like to walk down to the coffee shop at the corner of Fish Hatchery and Lacey Road, and I have to drive to Veterans Memorial and Park, and because I'm not going to walk on Fish Hatchery Road.
Well, there's a path all the way to Whalen.
All the way to Wayland, but I live past that.
Oh, you're saying.
Okay. Anything else? If not, thank you all for coming, and we've got
Snack
And there are what, back here?
Your own chat.
Okay, great.
Are there vacancies on the board?
I don't know who is up for reappointment and if they want to be reappointed. Generally, for all of our committees, if the people who are up for reappointment want to stay on, I don't kick people off. Rare instances if they don't show up or something like that. I don't remember who is up for reappointment. And you want to be reappointed, I think?
Looking good.
Yeah, all right. All right.
I don't know, I think about the April agenda coming up.
Yep.
There are other committees.
There are plenty of other committees. Yeah, there's lots of committees, and there are openings on other committees. Off the top of my head, PFC, I don't remember what else. Board of Review, Library Board, that's one that's usually popular.
And what is PFC?
Police and Fire Commission, sorry. Police and Fire Commission. Yep. So there's a few other ones. And there's a form you can fill out, and if there's something you're interested in, you can say that. And then there's a way to, if there's like 3 or 4 you're interested in, you can list all of those. And so then if something is open, we can get you in that. But yeah, April is essentially, March, April is when all the reappointments happen. So that's when there's generally more openings. Sometimes people move and have to drop off throughout the rest of the year, but this is kind of the time when most of the openings happening.
Right.
Yeah, well, if you're interested in some of the issues that come up before this committee, you're welcome to come to the committee meetings. You can participate, you know, in the discussion, voice your opinions or thoughts on it, just as if you were, but you would not get to vote. But we would encourage to have somebody that has got a real interest in the subject that we're trying to make a decision on. Certainly goes a long way towards helping us. So feel free to at any time do that.
So we meet, not necessarily every month. Typically, when we do meet, it is on the third Tuesday at 4 o'clock. There are some months when we don't have a meeting. I think we probably meet about 8 months out of the year. Right now, I don't know that we have anything on the agenda for an April meeting, so I'm anticipating we probably will not have one in April. And it'll be kind of agenda-driven, because I don't think we have any real projects that we're working on at this time either.
Not at the moment, no.
So. No, but this time there is. Yeah, if you bring them.
I mean, if you bring them.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably get to that now. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? No one? Motion passes.
How long can we stay?